Hi guys, my name is Olaf. I'm one of the co-founders of Score Digital, and welcome to the 10th episode of Score Couch, podcast where we talk about technology, software development, UX UI design, and all of the things that are related to digital. Today, I'm going to talk with Paweł Cybowicz, who is a software tester, and we're going to talk about the importance of quality assurance and quality in general within a software development. Hi, Paweł.
Hi, Olaf.
Great to have you here on Score Couch.
Good to be here.
So today we're going to talk about, I think, the very important piece of the puzzle of the whole software development process, which is quality, right?
Yes.
So why don't you tell us, who you are, what's your story, what do you do?
My name is Paweł, and my role in Score is to test software. I'm a manual tester, and what I do is I try to make sure that the product that we deliver to the clients is of best quality.
Okay, so what exactly does software tester, quality assurance engineer do?
There's actually a debate about quality assurance engineer and software tester not being the same thing.
Okay.
And some people say that this is the same thing because in many companies both terms go simultaneously to describe the same person, but in fact it's not. A software tester is looking for bugs or looking for issues that already exist, whereas quality assurance engineer is trying to prevent from bugs to even happen. So when someone comes to the software house and makes an order to get a software delivered for them, a quality assurance engineer will analyze the idea, try to look for holes and point them out to the client so they can rethink the whole strategy, so there's no gaps in the logic or there's no gaps in the requirements and everything falls in together. And quality assurance engineer can also be a software tester, but it's not the same person.
Okay, so that really sounds interesting. I'm wondering what's then the intersection point between UX UI designer that also, to an extent at least, makes sure that your software will be tailored to your user group, right? Will be fitting within the market niche, will be easy to use, and so on and so forth, in the context of quality assurance engineer being involved at the beginning.
Well, yeah, like you said, the whole process needs to start at the very beginning. Quality assurance or software tester, they should be present on all the meetings since the very beginning, so they could get familiar with the project at its very core. And as you said, we need to know who's the target for the specific product. Without this, we're kind of like a child lost in the forest. Like, we don't know where we go in, we don't know what we're looking for. And if we know who's meant to use it, it's easier for us to fill these person's shoes and know what to expect and know how to approach the testing process.
Okay. And what would you say is like I wouldn't say maybe the most important piece at the very beginning, but how do you involve quality assurance engineer into the process? So like you guys come in when there is already an epic build by the analyst, by the business analyst. You guys come in while all of the user stories are ready in order to look at that, fill in, look for the gaps and so on, or where the wireframing is done. What would be the right moment?
I would say from the very beginning, when you close the deal, when the sales department closes the deal and you have the first meeting with the client where they describe the whole idea to the team, so that's the point.
Okay.
Because there is a term called statics testing, where you test, but you don't really test the idea, the documentation, where you can already find some holes in the logic or the issues that you may have with testing it. Like you can think of who's going to use it, how they're going to use it, if there are any roles within the product, let's say admin, end user, whatever, and you try to make sure that every possible path of action is covered by code. So yeah, the very beginning is the right point where you should implement testing.
Okay, so would you say that it's can we say that quality assurance engineer is someone that works hand in hand with UX UI designer, business analyst,
They should.
and software developer to make sure that everything is covered?
Yes, I think they should.
Okay, so we are past the first phase, analysis, workshop, and so on. Deal sold, contract signed, all good. We are starting the development process. How does quality assurance engineer and software tester come into the picture? What is the
well,
right moment?
that depends on how the development process is being set. For example, if you start with the backend development first, there's not really that much to test for a manual software tester if there's no user interface, right? Because they have no space to move around. But the developers, when they check each other's code, they write unit tests to make sure that the single bits of the code do the job they are meant to do. And this is also testing. And here's the funny thing. Software testers are not the only people who should test. Because everybody should be testing either dynamic or static. And as I said, the static is to look at the documentation and look for issues. And dynamic is to actually move around the user interface. But when we have some sort of user interface already, some designs are being moved to the actual environment, that's where a tester could compare what we have on the desktop to what we have on the design. And when you have a design, you can also look for issues, because if the idea is being described, but for some reason the UX or UI designer were not present at the meeting with the client, they may have not understood the idea well enough to move it to the picture. And when you look at the design, you can find a button that's not meant to be in that row, right? But when a developer looks at the design, he sees, okay, I need this button, I need this, and he just writes code, right? And the job there is to look at the button and to think, is this button really necessary here? Or if this button is meant to be here at all? Because let's say you're the end user and the designer, by a mistake, put a button there that says add an admin or remove the user, right? You should not have access to this button if you're the end user. So yeah, that was a very obvious example, but the real life is not often.
Yeah, but that's a very good one. So I would assume that this button thing comes into bucket of static testing.
Yes.
Okay. So this is very interesting, because it shows that, even from the very beginning, some of the things that people are doing, like in many other jobs, there can not intentionally, not intentionally be wrong, right?
Exactly,
or someone overlooked, made a mistake. Like when you have a block of text written by a copywriter, you can have the similar situation, and no one is surprised that people are proofreading stuff in order to determine whatever the word should be there, or do you have a comma here and there, and so on. So that's, I would say, it's a similar thing. So that's very interesting to know. But going back to the backends that you've mentioned and the unit testing, so I know that there are also the cases in which software quality assurance engineers are involved in writing those tests, right? They do that all in Python and so on. So I'm wondering, what's the then intersection, or where's the collision point in what does developer has to write, and what's the responsibility of quality assurance in general?
I may be wrong here, but I think that you meant automated testing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And that's a different thing, because when a developer is writing a piece of code and then he writes another code to test the code that he's already written, and automated testing is, for example, automated software tester. He writes a script that does what he could have done or has already done manually. And it's very useful for regression testing. So let's say you have a big project, there's a big product with a lot of paths to cover, right? And with every big release, you should check if everything still works fine, if anything has been affected by the big change, and if the basic functionality of the website works. And instead of having the testers manually test the same thing week after week, month after month, and it takes them, let's say, 5 days for a group of 3 testers, you're gonna spend a little bit more money and a little bit more time at the beginning to write the automated tests, but then you just hit the button and the automated tests do the same job that they would do in 3 days. The automated scripts do it in, let's say, 3 hours, right?
Okay.
And it throws out the errors, and they just report the errors to the development team.
Okay, so automated tests checked. How about the unit test? Let's go back to them. So the unit test is?
Unit test is a code written to test a single little bit of code written. I'm not sure if automated testing would do the thing, because you do it as you go, right? So it's not something that you would, it's not like a whole functionality to be tested, right? Because one functionality, let's say logging in to your account, that's built of 15, 20 test cases, right? Because you could go with the positive path and endless combination of the negative paths, right? And whereas in unit test, you only write like one line of code to, one bit of code to test like little bit of code. Let's say that login interface, that's like a lot more to be tested.
Yeah, there's like an email, there's a password,
exactly.
and there's a button.
That's too much for automated test. That's
Okay.
You could argue that automated test is a unit test in a way, but that, I guess, depends on
the interpretation.
Yeah.
You've said also very interesting 2 terms, lots of new terms today, by the way. Positive, negative path.
Mm-hmm.
Positive path, negative path.
Yeah, so the positive path is you check if it works, right? Because I would say that 90% of the users are not gonna do anything wrong on purpose, right? And this is, let's say logging in, which is a very good example. If you enter your email or your login and your password and you log in, that's the positive path. And the negative path is if you enter wrong password, right? And see if the system logs you in with the wrong password, but with the right login. So if it checks if this password is to this login, and if it logs you in, that's bad.
Wrong,
yeah, that's bad. And if it doesn't log you in, that's good, but that's a negative path. And with payments things, you could check if you put the wrong CVC number, if the payment goes through. If you enter the wrong login, right? If you see that the login should be with capital letters, and you put regular size letters, right? And see if it checks it.
That's actually very interesting. But I'm also curious about the negative path. Let's say that I'm putting my email and I'm putting my password, and I click login. Something was wrong, so either my email or my password, and then I do not get the screen with the information that something was wrong.
Okay.
This is positive, negative. This is a bug, or it's a feature.
It is a bug. It is a bug. It's a error handler bug, and yeah, the page should provide you information with what happened, right? The only thing that it shouldn't tell you is what exactly was wrong, right? Because it could tell you that, let's say you try to hack someone, right? And you know their email, and you put the password that you think they might be using, and the page tells you that the email was wrong, right? So you know that the password was right.
Yeah, sure.
And it shouldn't tell you this. It only should tell you that the information provided was not correct, or
yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, but that's a positive path, because the system did what you wanted to do, right? It didn't let you in, and that was a negative path. Because it didn't do what it shouldn't do, right? It did what you expected, which is not letting you into the system. But not giving you the right information is another thing.
Okay. How about, going further down the road. I mean, development process, right? We've covered the workshop, we have started the development, we know what are the unit tests, automated tests, and so on. Let's say that we are already starting, the picture starts to emerge. So we not only have backend written, but also have some front end. We also have a mobile application in the mix, right? And how about combining all those worlds together? You know, what are the important aspects that you should look at when you have picture consisting of different people, backend, front end, mobile application, stuff is happening, new features are being introduced. How do you
well, I would say
about that?
you need a responsible and committed product owner. Because if nobody knows what to expect of the product, how are you supposed to make sure it works the way it was intended, right? If you don't know what the way was. So a product owner who would, tell you that this is all right, this is not all right, and you know how to test it based on the client's expectations. And what you also need to look at is what your target group for the product is, because you would choose the devices to test differently based on who's going to use it. For example, let's say you are lucky enough to be founder of Facebook, right? You need every single possible device on the planet to be able to handle Facebook application, right? And every single operating system on the desktop, like everything, because everybody's on Facebook, right? And for example, you build a different product, which is an application for stock trading, right? Then you could probably ignore some low-budget mobile phones, right? You could ignore some low-budget laptops or computers, because people who are going to use it are of a different demographic than people who use Facebook, right?
Sure.
Choosing your devices to test and then the environments to test is very important, because you could, like, let's say for example, we had a situations where a client requested for the product to be tested on Windows, like few browsers and Android phones, and then when we went live, it turned out that nobody's using it. Nobody of the users of the website are using the devices that the page was mainly tested on. Right, and it turned out that people in the area that the product was released in use MacBook or iPhone, but they very rarely use Windows or Android phone.
So this is actually very interesting. How do you determine the types of devices that you need? Because often, when you build a product, you cannot afford to test every scenario. There's no way to find out if your application will work on every version of Android, iOS. Very rarely you are a co-founder of Facebook. In that case, at least at the very beginning, you don't
Almost
know that.
never.
Yeah. So how do you determine that? What to look for?
You need to, like, when you have a business plan, right? Because people who order software, they order it for a specific purpose, right? They know what they want to do on the actual platform, right? If it's a shop, if it's something for bidding, right? Or something to book a hotel, right? They can assume what kind of people they want to use their product, right? If it's going to be everyone, then it's a problem, right? Because it's a very wide spectrum of things you need to consider. But let's say that you want to create an application that books a hotel for you, right? And so you need to ask yourself, is it for people who are looking for low-budget hotels? Is it for people who are looking for high-end hotels when they go to France, or for people who want to go to Zakopane for skiing, right? You need to know these things, because then you can know who will probably use your product, right? And if it's for high-end hotels in France or in Alps or whatever, then you can expect what kind of people are going to use it, and then you can research what kind of devices are being used by, let's say, mid-range managers in corporations in Poland, right? And,
Sure.
and you could research it, and you would be surprised how much information you can actually find if you just Google this, right? Like how many iPhones are being used in Saudi Arabia, right? And you can literally see the numbers. And if you know what your goal is, who your target audience is, you can literally
Easily
Google,
determine.
who's gonna use it. And if it so happens that you want everybody to use your product, which is I think the most common case, then you need as many devices as you can put your hands on. To be fair, it involves a lot of cost for the software development because you need to either rent the devices or buy them. But you could also use like an online farm of devices. There are companies that provide you access to like an online emulator or online use of real devices that exist in their warehouse or somewhere, and you can access them remotely to test your product on the devices without buying actually or having them physically. Which is also, it might be an issue for the testers, because if one tester has like 15 mobile phones to test one product, and they would say and repeat the same test for 15 times on every single mobile, and keeping them charged is a challenge. Because you would need like 15 chargers, right, to keep them all at the same level of battery for the whole time. And I'm not sure if you can get 15 power sockets at your house or at your company. So that might be an issue. But when you decide to choose the specific devices, let's say for Android, and it's more complicated than for iOS, because the fragmentation of the market for Android is huge. Right, you have like what, 15, 20 manufacturers.
Yeah, different brands. You have different
brands,
operating systems, different
exactly,
levels of the devices.
And Android is not the same on every brand, right? The manufacturers like put their version of the Android system, so they're unique. And there's Xiaomi, who potentially could be treated as a different operating system. So you need an Android phone with big screen, with small screen, with that is upgraded to the latest Android system that has not been supported to get an update of the system. Whereas in iOS you can only look at the big screen with the notch, or the small screen without the notch, and the small screen with the notch, right? So you could close it in potentially free devices, whereas for Android you need at least 6 to 10 if you don't want to go flashing with it.
Yeah, super interesting. And I'm wondering, because like a lot of things come to my mind, like after what all of you said. So first of all, it's really important to look also at the demographics of the country, because the countries differ very much from Android versus iOS usage, right?
Exactly.
So this is important. Also a part that a lot of people overlook. They like totally, well, let's go for iOS, but why? Because I'm using it, right? So that's the first answer that you can get. But will your users use it? Sure, why not? So and then they also often people just overlook the fact of how important the platform is for the target group that you are willing to get.
These are the things that should have been decided before you started development, right? And this is the part why the testers should be present at the very beginning, because they can point out that, okay, so you said that you want your platform to do this and this, but who's going to use it? And well, the client can say, these people are going to use it, or they can say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And here's the point where he should sit down and think, like, who do I want to use my product? Because if they, like, okay, like I can agree that in most cases I would do the same, that I would say I want everybody to use my product, right? But in real life scenarios, especially if your product is for
non-existent.
Exactly, for market stock trading, right? Then obviously not everyone is gonna use. Like many people don't even know what stock market exactly is, right? And to expect that everybody's going to use the application for this is silly.
Yeah, it's silly.
Yeah.
So that's demographic, and that's looking for a certain platform in the context of your buyer persona, user persona, however we want to name it, because most of the people are in it to actually monetize, right, your product, because this is why you build software in most cases. But also you've mentioned farm of devices. I'm really curious about that, because I was always wondering, how does that exactly work? Is this essentially a type of virtual machine that you log into, install the software, and then you point and click and you test it how you would do on a normal device that you can hold in your hand? Or this is some sort of an automated layer that you only upload the app and here you go, like Note done, Galaxy S whatever done, right, and so on. How does this work?
So what you said first, that you have the thing online and you just upload your application, that's an online emulator or simulator, right? But the farm is different, and I'm not entirely sure how that exactly works, but as far as I was able to research it, there is an actual phone hooked up to a network and you just remotely access it. So let's say, for example, someone hacks you and takes control over your laptop through the internet, right? They could literally do everything on your, or some tech support, right? They can also do that to fix some issues. So I would say roughly this is how that works.
Okay.
There is a physical, real device that you access through the internet and just
do your
just
thing.
play with it. Yeah.
Just play with it. Okay. So we have covered the demographics. We have covered the devices and how do you go about testing. I'm wondering, especially after the part with 15 sockets, 15 types of devices, installing all that and so on. Is it a dull job? I mean, like, can you get bored with that? Like,
I would say some people could. That's why the job is not for everyone. And I know there's a lot of people, like every other job. And there's a lot of people trying to get into the industry to be a software tester because they've heard stories, right? They've heard stories that this is an easy job and it pays good money.
Well, yeah.
And you don't need to be very technical to be able to do it. But then, the deeper
the reality,
they get,
the reality emerges from that
and
picture.
I would say that depends on who the person is, because if the person is not very curious, they just want to, come in to the 8 hours of whatever and then go home and forget about this, then they would probably get bored. And it depends what they did before and what kind of person they are, like what kind of hobbies they were attracted to. Because if someone was living a very high-paced life, they would probably get bored with just the idea of sitting down for 8 hours, right? Let alone having 15 phones, and let's say you have a new version of the app, right? You need to reinstall the same thing on 15 phones. And then you need to perform the same tests on 15 phones, right? It may be, for some people, it may be actually boring. But if you are a guy or a woman who likes to be very
organized, I would say.
Organized, and you like, having steady job that you just sit and you do your thing bit by bit, test by test, and you report the issues back. Then
it's fun.
It's fun. Yeah, it could be fun. For me personally, what is fun is that I get to know all the different things, right? Because you get to play with with the iPhone, you get to play with some different brands of Android phones. You just get to play with it, right? You get to have it in your hands, or a MacBook or an iPad. You get to know these things, as well as you get to research the product. Because let's say the product is the platform to book a hotel, right? Then you want to, or you should, try to act like a customer, right? You try to feel like the person who wants to book the hotel in Alps because you want to go skiing. And you need to think, because you cannot be every person in the world, right? You only yourself with your preferences, with your attitude, with your approach to life or holidays or booking hotels. And that's not enough to fully test the functionality, because you need to be able to think like as many characters as possible. So you could be like, okay, but what if I wanted to be able to order hot towels, right, through the app, right? And you can't. And if it's a high-end app, that the chances are that there are going to be clients who will want to do this over the app. So you might want to suggest it to the client who ordered the software. And yeah, you get to research. And as a person myself who likes to research things, it's interesting, it's fun, because if you like researching stuff, you only research stuff that, you know, come to your vision, right? You just don't just randomly sit there and what shall I research today, right?
What do I do? Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's click random on Wikipedia, right?
Yeah, exactly. You don't do. I mean, you could, but I can't imagine people who do that and then they, you know, just search more and investigate the subject. But in software testing, with every new project, you kind of have to, even if it's something
because the challenges are different.
Yeah, it's
challenging.
Exactly. Yeah, and you have a different team for every project, and you have a different clients, and these are the challenges that you need to face, and they might be interesting. And here's another misconception about the industry, is you really need some soft skills, because people, I believe that people overlook that part, and they think if they're very technical, then everything is going to be fine, which might be the case for developers, but not always. There needs to be at least one developer who can efficiently communicate with the client, especially if the company he's working for is not very large and there's no product owner, there's no Scrum Master specifically. And a person needs to adapt to fulfilling a few different roles in the project, right? Being a developer and the product owner. And then, they need some soft skills, because how are you going to find out from the client what they want if you don't know how to talk to them?
Yes, true.
Right? And if there's a sales department, they don't really know the technical bits.
Plus, at the moment of software development, they do not care as much as previously,
exactly,
right?
because you want to close
like
the
everything
deal,
okay?
right?
Oh, yeah, we're doing good. Okay, fine. That's all.
Exactly. Yeah, and another thing is that many issues come out during the development process, right? Because the client changed their mind. Like we had situations where a client requested, let's say, functionality A. And you talk to the client, and the client tells you, okay, I want this to be able to do this, 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 and this. And you're like, okay, hold up, but maybe you should consider that the functionality also includes the possibility that the user might do this and this. And they're like, nah, let's just do it this way. And then a month later, they're like, do you know what? Actually, let's go back and let's do this. But then you need to rewrite the whole thing, and because you built it in a way that doesn't allow this thing to happen, and now you need to go back and rewrite the whole thing. And sometimes it's not just a quick fix that takes one line of code. Sometimes it takes the whole thing to be thrown out and written all over again. So yeah, you need to be able to communicate and speak English, which is very prosaic.
Yeah, in some cases, right? Because you might also work for a company that only does work for Polish customers, German customers, and so on.
You could, but you limit yourself.
And this is a very, I would say, international, global industry that we are in.
Exactly.
So this is, let's say, part of the picture.
From what I've heard, Poland is a very good country to outsource the job to.
Yeah, that's true.
From the Western English-speaking countries like USA, Canada, Great Britain.
Yeah, true. That's actually super interesting what you said, because that sounds really like a job that I would love to do. Because like with clicking, and being neat about stuff, I wouldn't feel as good. But with the fact of researching, getting to know people's behaviors, finding out what do they like, why, and so on. I get very excited when I need to get into something new. I have those episodes in life, even like not professional but private stuff, when I just get onto something so much that I just consume books, podcasts and so on, because I want to know more about certain topics. So yeah, this sounds pretty interesting in comparison to
Yeah, and here's a funny example. Actually, the first thing that I ever tested commercially as a fully blown software tester was a web application designed to manage a fitness studio. And
super popular industry.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, fitness is like
that was actually
7 out of 10 projects.
That was actually my previous line of work. I used to be a personal trainer before. And the
Interesting transition.
And the reason why I got involved in the project was because I had the industry knowledge that people from outside the industry may not be able to possess. And so the developers were developing the application, and we had the opportunity to work together because I was just beginning in the industry. And it was a lot easier for me, as well as it was beneficial to them, because it was easier for me because I knew the environment, right? I knew
you probably knew what people expect, what trainers expect.
Yes. I knew what the expectations were on the end user side of the thing. And I remember that I looked at the thing and I was like, half of the functionalities they need to go, like nobody uses them. No one uses them, and the time they spent to develop those, which they could have saved, was huge, right? Let's say it was like 20% of the whole application, which could have not been spent if they had someone like me from the day one. Which brings us to the first thing that we talked about, is why you should be from the very beginning, and that's why you should research your project so you could save money for your company, right?
Yeah, that's super important, what you said. So super important, and also another thing that people overlook at the very beginning. So I want to build a product, but instead of doing an MVP, so a minimum that is needed to prove your business case, to prove that you have target audience out there, that people will pay for your product, that people will convert, wherever that is your goal, instead of, we need those features because no one have them, so this will be unique and so on. That's often the trap that people walk into, assuming that those features that I find important, that are relevant for me as an end user, will be also relevant for everyone else, which is often not the case.
Exactly.
But what we've also talked about, and what you've mentioned in the context of soft skills, I would like to get back to that, because I think it's really important. I remember that one of our other co-founders once told me, and that was a very important lesson for me, that a software tester should be someone that is very assertive. So when the developer comes to you, and when you come to the developer and tell him that, dude, this is not working properly, because this should be like that. And they turn back on you and said, no, it's good. It's all right. And then you should not just, turn back and go to your desk, but tell him, no, you're wrong. And you should argue with him, right? That this is totally wrong.
Remote work makes it easier because not everyone is comfortable with confrontation face to face. But it hasn't happened to me in that drastic scenario that you just described yet. But there have been cases where a ticket was going back and forth between QA and in progress like 10 times.
Okay.
Because
this is right, no, this is wrong.
Yes, is right, exactly. And there have been situations where the ticket was coming back to the QA column on Jira with a comment, cannot reproduce, 10 seconds after I put it there. So there was no chance that
someone even looked at it.
Exactly, he just bumps it back. Just leave me alone. But I would leave a comment that, have you even checked it? Like, please describe the steps that you've taken to check it. And this is where they they have to check it.
Yeah, they usually give up. Like,
because
okay, so
what
he's
are they gonna do,
persistent.
right? Because
I need
what
to
are they
do
gonna
that.
do? They can't just comment back saying I checked it, right? Because you asked for specific steps, and if they cannot reproduce, they would have to know which steps they have taken, right? They could arguably manufacture the path that's saying I clicked this, and then it didn't happen, right? What you said happened to you. But then I could also, record the screen while I'm doing it, and here's, hard evidence that this is happening.
Yes.
And even if you cannot reproduce it, this is happening. And here's the environment information. This is the device that it was doing it. So maybe the problem is with the device that you don't have. That's why you cannot reproduce. But yeah, there's always a way. And the funniest thing is, it works on my end, right?
Yeah, that's the.
So
I think that's one of the top 3
exactly. Yeah.
sentences,
So
right?
my response to that was, okay, then why do you think it's not working on my end? And then we could, together we could look at the possible reasons why it may not look. Maybe I broke something, right? Maybe I'm on the wrong environment. Maybe I didn't update the app. Maybe I did something, right? And I always try to, because it's not their fault. Like,
sure,
sometimes it is, but I think that you shouldn't let them know that you think this is their fault. Because we're all human, we all make mistakes, right? And some developers make fewer mistakes and some make more mistakes, but that's not for me to judge who's good and who's bad. My job is to
it's to get to the bottom of what's wrong, right?
Exactly. Like, we all want to deliver as good as possible product to the client, right? Because he's paying the money, he needs to be happy. And the way you test it is also based on what the client wants, but you also need to know what the client needs. And I had a situation where the client didn't really care if the functionalities work, but was very upset if the font was different, right? Which is, for me, it was irrelevant, right?
No.
But if a client wants it this way, then I would go through the whole platform again and make sure that all the fonts are correct as on the design, and if it's consistent, if the font size is correct, if the lines are aligned perfectly, if it all looks the way the client wants, right? Because what's the point of developing a product that works perfectly if the client doesn't like it, right? They need to be happy with it, right? Because they need to be happy.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it's like, because that's there's this thin line between yeah, we need to like it and it's actually usable. Please trust us on this one, because
and here's the part where the product owner comes in handy, because he's the bridge between the development team and the client. Because if the client says, okay, I want this because I like it, the product owner would say, listen, I know you like it, but if we make it this way, it would be impossible for the users to use this crucial part of the functionality, right? So we need to keep this the way it is. But what we can do is we can do blah, 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 right? And it keeps the both sides happy.
Yeah, I think that's yet another example of why the communication is important and how actually important it is within the whole process. Mm-hmm. Because and I think that's also one of the things, a bit of an off top here, but I think important one. What differs person that just entered the industry or is within an industry for like a year, maybe 2 years, than someone who is a senior or has been working in different environments with different people, is that, I don't mean you harm by telling you that something is wrong, mm-hmm. or that something does not work properly, or we need to change, or we need to improve on something, because that's the part of the equation, right? And mm-hmm. and this, I think this works in so many different directions, like you and a development team, product owner and a development team and a client, product owner and a client, client and project manager, lead, tech lead, and team lead, like a lot of different people that are involved. They just mm-hmm. need to be open about what they are doing, because if we would be upset about every comment or everything that people just tell us, then it won't get us far, that's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. Like I think that we've covered a lot of very important aspects today, ranging from why software tester, quality assurance engineer should be involved from the very beginning of the software development process. What are differences between the roles? What we can do in order to improve the intersections between the development team and the quality assurance. How do you do that, and so on? And also about your craftsmanship, which for me was very refreshing in a lot of different aspects, because I have not taken into account many things that seem really interesting and important. Do you have any, I don't know, advices for people that are going to build their own product, that are about to embark on this journey?
Make sure that you start asking questions as early as possible and think what questions you want to ask, because if you don't, what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed, right? And what I mean by measuring in context of software development is you need to know what you're building, who you're building it for. Because if you don't know that, then, you're like a headless chicken.
What's the point?
Yeah, you're like a headless chicken, right? In a narrow corridor. Like you're gonna reach the point, but the amount of hassle that along the way comes with it it's not necessary. And it's not good for morale for the whole team, because if there are so many changes at the end of the project that, you spend, like, let's say 3 days on building something just for the client to look at it and say, nah, let's do it this way. Then you just wasted 3 days, right? Okay, like maybe you learned some new bit of code to how to write some sort of functionality, but what was the point? Like, it benefits you for the future, but it burns the budget, and the client may not be happy with it. And the reason why it happened is because you didn't communicate at the very beginning. So you didn't have a clear specification of the product.
And understanding of what you are about to build.
Yeah.
Super interesting, Paweł. That was a really awesome conversation. I've
Thank
learned
you.
a lot of a lot of new things today, a lot of new terms. I hope that also our viewers will enjoy it. Thank you for being here, and I sincerely hope that we'll have the opportunity to, repeat this one, maybe a different context.
I'll be happy to.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. I hope you have enjoyed our conversation about quality. If you did, then please make sure that you subscribe to our channel, that you comment below this video, and let us know what would you like to see in the next episode. See you soon.